Hello and welcome back to the one, the only Welsh Watch podcast. Today we have a very special guest in Rhys Jenkins. For those of you who don't know who Rhys Jenkins is, Rhys is a Welsh Ultra Runner who's completed runs such as Badwater 135 in Death Valley, USA, which is 135 miles in 118 degree plus heat across 3 mountain ranges.
As well as that, Rhys has also run the Welsh Coastal Path, which comes to 870 miles, and he did that in just 20 days.
He also previews his next challenge where he runs from John O'Groats to Land's End while summiting 3 of the highest peaks in Scotland, England and Wales. We hope you enjoy this incredible interview. Over to you, Ben Thomas. Hello, Rhys. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, mate. And yourself?
I'm very good, thank you. How's life in lockdown for you?
It's okay. Recently moved to Crickhowell, so actually left Cardiff now, but it's a lot quieter up here. But it's doing wonders for my running. Lots of hills, and I've got no excuses now, apart from if the weather's terrible.
Well, you are in Wales, so it's always going to be terrible.
That's very true, my friend. Very true.
And obviously, just to start this off, obviously, it's, we're in a pandemic. There's a lot of lockdown, and a lot of athletes obviously struggle to stay motivated and keep training. How do you keep yourself motivated, and what do you do to train still?
I guess I'm quite lucky because I'm just into my running, so I don't necessarily need a gym. I do use the gym when it's open for strength and conditioning, but majority of my work is done outside, and I don't really have an excuse not to be out there. I love the training aspect of it. It gives me a better chance of completing silly challenges, and I have a coach as well. So my coach actually structures out my week and what I need to do. So like this morning, it's bitterly cold out there, but I had to go and run for like 2 hours up and down a mountain, like just back and forth. But it's just one of those things. It's a joke between me, him, and a few others. So like, if you want me to turn up to something, he'll put it in my training diary, and I'll just turn up. So yeah, I think the training he structures it for me, but the motivation is just, I guess, wanting to achieve, go further, go better. And yeah, I've got a couple of challenges lined up for this year.
So for those people that don't know about your story and who you are, could you just give us a quick background about who you are and your achievements?
Yeah, of course, mate. So my name's Rhys Jenkins. I'm 33 years old, from Penarth, South Wales. I've been running since about 2010 now, and that actually started with I'd run about a half marathon up until 2010. And then myself, my best friend, and my brother decided to run across America. We spent more time running it than we did planning it, if that makes sense. So you can imagine the bit of show we were in for. Our bodies literally broke for the first like 6 weeks. And after that point, we started to see an upward trend. We got better, we got fitter, couldn't really get more injured than where we were at. So our bodies actually repaired themselves quite weirdly. From that point though, every year I've just sort of set myself the challenge of doing at least 2 challenges for charity. And it's seen me go from Iceland, running across there from east to west. I've run across Death Valley in California multiple times, like the hottest place on earth. Most recently I actually set the world record for the Wales Coastal Path, and that's probably my highlight so far. And that was 870 miles in 20 days, 10 hours and 36 minutes. Yeah, I think that would, I'd say that was, me in a nutshell right there.
So, like, obviously you run, like, we're talking like massive distances here. We're not talking like I went out for a little jog, like, but just out of interest, I guess more for me, if anything, what's your 5K time?
My 5K time, I actually got my best 5K time at a Nike running club in Cardiff, and it was around 19 minutes. It's not that fast in comparison to other people, but if I was to try and go that pace now, I wouldn't be able to get near it. I like have different muscle fibers now, so I can't really go fast, but I can go longer and further at a slower pace. What's yours out of interest?
I don't know if I want to say, well, my best 5K time, which I think was like a few weeks ago, was 25 minutes, which I was happy with. But
that's decent, mate.
I was happy with that, but yeah.
You get some freaks out there, don't you, that like can run ridiculous fast.
The ones who can sprint a 5K, I'm like,
Do you know what? Like one of my friends, he's like just freakishly he just runs. Like he literally he can dip in and out whenever he wants. But when he runs, he is just fast. And me, I do try to run with him because I do know it will help me over time. But I just know if it was like over 30 miles, I'd beat him. But anything lower than that, he beats me every time.
So you've already mentioned you completed the world's toughest foot race in Death Valley, Badwater 135. It's running 135 miles in 118-degree heat across 3 mountain ranges with an overall climb of over 14,000. How on earth have you done that?
Oh man. So Badwater is like, it's my #1 challenge. It's my #1 event. Okay. So the Wales Coastal Path was something I created. I went after it, but Badwater is a race in itself. And it took me about a 10-year journey, really. So since 2010, I've heard about the race and I've been wanting to get into it and so on and such. So I've actually been out there 4 times to run the route by myself with a friend for charity, but not the official race. So I got myself ready for it that way and sort of learned the course. The first year I went over there, I thought it was flat. So like you just touched upon then, there is a lot of elevation over there. So you can imagine this Welshman turning up to Death Valley, not having a clue what he was in for, thinking it was going to be flat as a daisy, and he hits like around 40 miles, it kicks up, and like it kicks up for about 16 miles. Like there's no give or anything. You just end up about 500 and about 5,000 feet above sea elevation, or above sea level, wherever it is. And in 2019, I actually managed to get in the official race and managed to finish, the world's toughest foot race. And like you said, it is 135 miles along scorching highway, up and down 3 mountain passes, and the world record, like for temperature, I know you said it was like 118. The world record's like 132, and that was in Death Valley, and you run past that hottest point. So the average is 118 when the race is actually taking place. But I think I've had it up to about 124 before, and it was literally you just feel I don't know, you can feel the blood in your head sort of pumping, and everything becomes a lot more difficult. And it's just the first mile is always the most difficult because you are trying to breathe and you're breathing in hot air. The best way you can describe it is like going inside an oven and turn off the lights at night time, because even when it's dark, it's still hot over there, and the road surface is just like phenomenally hot. So you could put an egg on it and it would cook. It wouldn't like sizzle, but it would cook eventually. That's how hot it gets to. But it is just it's beautiful. Yes, it's horrible in terms of like it tests the body and it pushes you. But you look around and you're just in this awe-inspiring place with 99 other athletes who have worked their balls off to be there as well. It's a pretty cool event.
So you just briefly mentioned it. How did you cope with a constant change in the altitude?
So the route actually starts below sea level, weirdly. So you start at a place called Badwater Basin, and halfway up a cliff face where you start from, you can see a little sign, and some sadistic person has put on it sea level. So you know you're already below underground, basically. And then you spend, if I describe the route to you, so the first 40 miles is sort of dipping in and out of sea level. So you're just bobbling along. At 40 miles, it kicks up for about 16 miles, and that's about 5,000 feet. You go up and over from sea level now, or below sea level, so you can imagine the elevation. Then you drop back down back to sea level. Then you go back up again to about 5,000 feet. Then it plateaus for a bit, so it doesn't go back down straight away. And then it starts dropping. And then when you come to around 122 miles into the race, it kicks up and you finish about 8,000 feet up. And oh my God, it is 13 miles of just, think of the hardest hill you've ever gone up and just times it by 10, because it is relentless. You've been baked by the oven of Death Valley. But when you get to the top, there's a couple of switchbacks. And when you get to one of the switchbacks, you can look back on yourself and you can see where you've come from. You can see the heat rising out of Death Valley, which is like pretty special. But the elevation, I think, is just something you get used to as the race goes along, or you just become too tired and sort of forget about it.
That is absolutely ridiculous. I thought about the hill that I climb. It's literally like that. It's nothing, and I don't want to do it any worse than it is already. But you did speak about the Welsh Coastal Path. Obviously, you broke the record time for that. When you arrived in Chepstow at the end, which for everyone that doesn't know is the end of the coastal path, how did you feel when you had all your family waiting for you and then you could finally cross the line in your Welsh flag? How did that feel?
It was the only way I can describe it. It was raw emotion. It was literally just the whole 20 days I'd been allowing myself to just, just take one glimpse at the finish line in my head and think what would happen, how would I feel? And it was no more than that. I wouldn't let myself get ahead of myself or anything like that. It was just a little bit of a motivation to fuel myself. And even with like 10 steps to go, the only thing I knew I was going to do was hug Caris, my wife, who was your cousin, actually. We only learned this earlier, which is pretty cool. And yeah, just even 2 steps away, I just knew I was hugging Caris. And then suddenly I hit that line. I had the Welsh flag on my back. The only thing, it just took over me. I just felt like punch in the air and like spinning around. It wasn't planned or anything like that. It was just, the whole thing just took over me. And when I hit back on the floor, I didn't jump high at all. My legs could barely carry me at that point. But everybody said you could just see my shoulders drop. You know, when you're like really tired and you just sort of sink like that, you could just see it just leave my body immediately. And it was just incredible to see everybody there.
So what was your exact time? And when you found out that you actually broke the record, because I know you were tracking the times, how did you feel when you actually realized that you had done that?
It was very close. It was very, very close. So I broke the record by about 2 hours. I know it sounds like a lot, but over 20 days, it is not a lot at all. That is the case of having 2 extra breaks. It's something which could really screw you over. And even 3 miles out is when I started to believe I had the record, because in my head, I was always going worst case scenario. So what if I do my ankle in? What if I sprain it? What if I hurt myself? Can I crawl to the end? And I had 2 hours left with 3 miles to go. And I was like, even if I hurt myself now, I can physically pull myself, that distance and get there in time, touch wood, hopefully. And my friend has sort of sat me down and he's like, you do know this record is yours now. And that's when it hit me about 3 miles out. I was just like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, I went into this like wanting to run the Wales Coastal Path. So I was going to win either way. I was very happy with that. When the record became within touching distance over the last couple of days, because I was behind schedule and my last 2 days had to be, what were they? I think they were around 90k and then 80k on the final days. And it was just literally a case of just everybody helping me, opening gates for me, just getting me moving forward. But to get the record is like, it was very cool. It was amazing. The guy who had the record as well was very supportive. His name was James Harkham. He lives in New Zealand now, but he's originally Welsh. So it felt weird taking it off another Welshman. If it'd been like an Englishman or something like that, I'd have been, yeah, wicked. But he was a lovely bloke. And you know what? We've got something special that only both of us have done now, where we followed each other's footsteps. All right, he went the opposite way. I started running home because I knew that magnetic pull of running through my hometown of Penarth, running to Chepstow would be enough, fingers crossed, to get me the record, and it did. It was it's pretty cool feeling. Yeah.
What was the toughest part of that what was the toughest part of the challenge?
The toughest part, so about a week left to go, my ankle just went completely. I didn't go over on it. It was just the constant slant of the path, because you can imagine I'm just running on a slant the whole time. And I could barely put weight on my ankle by the end. It was a case of just having to, every time I stopped, my physio would have to like tape it up or just massage it and get it moving again. But I think the Groundhog Day feeling, every time you'd wake up and you knew exactly what you had to do, you knew what was ahead of you. The weather was probably 50% good in my favor, 50% against me. So the weather absolutely sucked when I was on Anglesey. And Anglesey was just, it felt like it's a beautiful place, don't get me wrong. But obviously, it's not mainland Wales. So in my head, I had it as like a bit of a detour. It's not a detour, don't get me wrong. But in my head, I was just like, this is like 135 miles of going around in a circle, because the bridge you go on to Anglesey, you actually come off on that same bridge. So you like retracing your footsteps after doing 135 miles around this really jagged coastline. But it is beautiful and it's worthwhile doing. It was just the constant. I said to Keris, like, I became a child before the end of that event. My head was just completely fuzzy. I could barely you know, eat my food. I was not sleeping well at all. The sleep I was getting was horrendous. On the last night, they wouldn't even let me sleep in like a bed or anything. They told me I had to sleep in the back of the van because they didn't want me to get too comfortable, just in case I didn't get up and have enough time to go the next morning. So the little things like that, which at the time really, really sucked, and they were horrendous, but they had to be done for the greater good, because I only broke the record by 2 hours in the end. So it was worthwhile doing. But yeah, there's a lot of difficult things to that challenge.
So for everyone out there that doesn't know, Rhys's next challenge is the John O'Groats to Land's End. And if I'm not mistaken, you're attempting that in 20 days?
Yes, mate. So it's so yeah, John O'Groats to Land's End via Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike, and Snowdon. So it has been done before, and there is a fastest known time on it, and it's 31 days at the moment. So I want to go and break it by 11 days, basically. And my target is to run 50 to 60 miles a day. It's just over 1,000 miles in total. And it's 100,000 feet of climb. So it's hillier than the Wales Coastal Path. It's not all trails, though. There could be roads in there. It's multi-terrain. And then obviously you got the mountains and the risk of going up and down the mountains, which I hope I get good weather, because you know what, you could slip a little bit and that's the whole thing done just right there and then if you like misjudge your footing or anything like that. But yeah, 20 days, 50 to 60 miles a day, 100,000 foot of climb, and yeah, hopefully get a fastest known time on that.
Can you just walk us through one of the days? So say it's like the 13th day. What would your 13th day, if it was all going well, look like?
Yeah, I can give you that idea. It's literally a case of I'd wake up around 6, maybe 7. One of those people that don't eat before I run. I'm terrible. So like when I train, I'll train starved in the mornings. And this is something I learned from the Wales Coastal Path. So at the start of the Wales Coastal Path, I was eating in the mornings and I was getting stomach issues like mid-morning. And we sat down, we didn't sit down, I just got fed up of it. And we sort of thought about it and we were like, well, I don't eat when I train, so let's not eat at the start of the day. Let's eat later on when I'm hungry. And it did that and it worked. So to come back to your question, yeah, I'd get up, I'd probably have a bath or a shower to wake myself up. And then getting your kit on, like 13 days into a challenge is a challenge in itself. So like you make sure your feet are clean, you Vaseline your feet up, you put your socks on, you Vaseline your other bits and bobs on your body to make sure you don't get any chafing. And then you put your kit on, obviously. You check the weather outside and see whether you need waterproofs or whether you need to get some sticks out, look at the terrain and stuff. And then it's a case of wherever we slept, we'll drive to the start point. So we will have a camper van on this trip. But if people are kind enough and we're lucky to get a hotel, we would take we would take the hotel as well if there's one option. But in Scotland, there's not going to be any options, so we'll be sleeping in the back of the van. So it'd be a case of getting out of the van or whatnot. 13 days in, I'd probably start taking Coca-Cola and Red Bull in the mornings. I love that. It's just like a little caffeine kick to get me going. I become a bit of a garbage container by about day 13, where I just chuck everything in my body. But in the mornings, I don't eat foods, but I do drink a lot of fluids, obviously. Then it'd be a case of setting off for the day. Keris would be given a pre-arranged checkpoint. So let's just say in the Wales Coastal Path, I was running a marathon before having the checkpoint by the end of it. So day 13 would be when I'm just about hitting my stride, I guess. So that would be around, first one would be about 20 miles to the first checkpoint. I'd see her there. At that point, I'd be hungry. So I'd start eating, making sure I'm taking on calories because I want to, because I feel that way. You know, I'm not forcing it in me, but I'm eating it because I'm hungry. We go again, but we break the next one down. So it wouldn't be 20 miles. It would be 10 miles to the next checkpoint. Okay. It's a nice way of thinking, right? Okay, well, I've done 20 in the morning. I only have to go 10 now to see Keris again. And then you repeat that pattern again, and then you got yourself 50 miles for the day. It's it's going into each day and not thinking of it as 50 miles. It's going into each day and going, right, I've got a 20-mile run. Let's do that. Then I have a bit of a break, 10 miles, bit of a break, 10 miles, bit of a break, 10 miles. You can go and sleep for the rest of the day, you know? It's not as simple as that, obviously, but that would be a generic standard set of like the mileage and the checkpoints of the day. We'd finish, I'd make sure any blisters or anything were popped. I'd try to clean my body if we had a shower or a bath. If not, it'd be a wet wipe shower, which you know what, by day 13, you're starting not to care about how you smell. You're just like, this is part of the challenge. And you'd literally either have like a bit of a massage. I got one of those massage guns. So I'd probably do one of those over, eat my dinner and go to sleep. That's literally, it's run, eat, sleep, repeat, the whole process of it. And be lucky, hopefully, if some people come out and run with me. It's nice to have a change of company sometimes. But I'm also just as good as running off by myself, because you put music in or you can put podcasts on as well. That's how a day would look to me, without going into too much grim detail for you.
But in the build up to this, like, there's quite a while still. It's in the summer. How many miles a day are you covering now to prepare?
So actually, this is quite timely. So my training regime has started today, and it's a case of we don't go after miles. We go after time and time on feet. So it's all, I do track miles. Don't get me wrong. It's always nice to know how far you've gone. But in terms of my diary, it's a case of, right, you're going out for a 2-hour run today. That 2 hours is going to be spent on a hill. Tomorrow, it'll be a little bit less. I work in like peaks and troughs. So it's a mountain and a valley, you work up throughout the week, okay? But in terms of average time, this week will be 13.5 hours on my feet. Next week will be 15.5 hours on my feet. The week after will be 17.5 hours on my feet. But it's a case of sometimes there'll be double runs in a day as well. So it'd be on this Saturday, I have a 3-hour run in the morning and then followed up with a 2-hour hike. That sort of technique is the idea of getting time on feet, but getting time on feet with tired legs, which is what my legs are going to feel like after day one. So I need to get used to that feeling again, because I haven't gone that far since the Wales Coastal Path, actually. So working like, so I do 3 weeks of heavy training, I have a soft week. 3 weeks of heavy training, I have a soft week. By that point, last year, if I give you an idea of the total mileage I did, it was around 6,000 kilometers throughout the year. And that was obviously the Wales Coastal Path. The majority of that was spent in my training miles as well. So it was a lot of mileage like that. But then also I do a lot of recovery as well. So for every minute I run, I try to do a minute of recovery per day. It's just a weird little mental thing which I do, because I do mobility exercises, I do flexibility, I do a little acupuncture mat, I use a massage gun, I use stuff that by the time you've done all 4 of those things, you've usually got yourself an hour of recovery right there and then. But yeah, it sounds tough, but it's not. It's 2 hours a day. Like obviously Saturday would be 5 hours and stuff like that, but you've still got another 19 hours left in your day. It's weird. I tricked myself into thinking it's not a lot. I think that's the best way of putting it.
That's certainly a lot of miles. I don't think I'll ever do that in my lifetime. But so over the course of the 20 days, how do you expect it to go? Is it like a blank canvas? You just don't know what you're getting into, or do you have a certain map in your head of how you think it'll go?
We'll have a structure or have a plan. Usually day one, that goes out the window straight away. And you just, like you said, blank canvas. You have your best ability going into these things is being able to adapt on the fly. And if things aren't working well for you, you just realize that, and you have to figure out a way to make it better. Otherwise, if you keep following down that hole, you're going to end up buried. You need to get yourself out of that hole straight away. And that's the case, even on the Wales Coastal Path. And if I was having a day, we go, right, okay, you're not going for 40 miles a day, you're going for 30 miles. And then immediately I've given myself a little bit of all right, cool, that's nice, a nice little relief there straight away. So being able to adapt that, but then obviously realize I need to make up 10 miles the next day. But it is a case of, being adaptable, but also having your broader picture of knowing you can't get too far behind the records. But going into this challenge, I'm trying to break it by 11 days. So I'm going to, if everything goes to plan, which I'd love it to, but it probably won't, then I'd be ahead of the record, which would be weird, because in the last challenge, I was behind the record the whole way. So it would be weird to hold a buffer. And you know what, I would hold on for that for dear life. If I managed to get ahead of the record with that, I wouldn't let go. But then, you know what, a lot of people go into these and they go, right, I'm going to run 1,000 miles. I'm going to do it as quick as possible. That's cool. But if you try and go as quick as possible and rack up like 70 miles in one day, and then the next, and then the next, you'll find yourself causing yourself an injury. It's always better to sort of just hold off a little bit, work yourself into the challenge, and then when you've got 1 or 2 days left, if you want to throw out a 70-mile day, go for it, because you're that close to the finish line. You just, a lot of people go into this sometimes thinking they just cause themselves injury. If you can hold off injury and manage to keep yourself going, you've got a decent chance of, well, making it to the finish line. And if you put your pressure of trying to get a fastest known time, breaking the record as well.
And what are the mental, I suppose on a personal way, like what are the mental obstacles for you when you run like this? Like there's always going to be something there, isn't it? But for you, what is it?
No, that's a good question, that is. You know what? It's anything can set you off in one of these challenges. And I mean like the smallest of details. Like my best friend before, when we ran across America, I've seen him lose his on a packet of Oreos, like throw them on the floor and like start stamping on them as if they're like his worst enemy. I'm just there going, oh my God, like what happened? And it was just a case of his phone wasn't opening. You know, when like your phone doesn't open properly, that just set him off there, straight there and then. I had it on the other challenge last year, the Wales Coastal Path. It was little things that would just kick me off. But one of my biggest assets and greatest assets is your cousin, Keris. She literally knows how to put out a fire before it gets going. And like I'm throwing my toys out the pram and she's throwing them back in straight away, not giving me a reason to kick off or manage to get in this funk. Because if I can remain in a positive mindset, I'm going to be better off for doing it that way. Because if you go into it negatively, you're going to find yourself in a downward spiral. But mental blocks for me are like, you know how I said, like a mental block for me was looking at a day and going, that's 50 miles. So I tried to ignore that mental block by going, right now, it's 20 miles, then it's 30 miles, then it's 10, then it's 10, then it's 10, and then you get 50. You try tricking your brain in a way to process it in a way that you're used to doing it, because what you said, you're talking about 5Ks earlier, so you're used to running a 5K. So all right, then you'd look, okay, it's a 1,000-mile run, but maybe look at it as 5Ks and just repeating that 5K which you're used to. I think one of the greatest mental blocks I see within other people is the word marathon. So marathon's just a word. It's just another number. It doesn't make a God, unless you're running a marathon, an official marathon, it is just 26.2 miles. If you can eliminate that word marathon, I guarantee you anybody who's run a marathon can push on to 30 miles, 100%. With like ultra running, you don't go hell for leather the whole time. You take your time and you take your feed, you take your drink on. You don't rush yourself unless you're trying to win the races, obviously. But yeah, I just think ultra running is a case of, yeah, I think marathon is a mental block for people, but I think ultra running is something anybody could achieve if they just broaden their perspective and mind of it. I also hate being away from Keris. So when I've done Death Valley before, she doesn't come, she doesn't fly. So she never comes to Death Valley with me. And being apart is always difficult because I don't have that person there to put out those fires when they kick off and like to look after me. But I do have other amazing support crew, don't get me wrong. But having her on the Wales Coastal Path last year was our first challenge together, and it was amazing. So if you took her out of the equation, for me, that would be a huge mental block straight away because I haven't got that, I guess you call it like a comfort block, blanket, whatever you want to call it, that safety net of knowing that I get to see her at every checkpoint, because every checkpoint's only 10 miles, you know?
So over the course of 20 days, what are you actually looking forward to the most? Is it the finish line or?
No, it's meeting other people and running with other people. I love running with strangers. I love running with friends. But when they all come together, it's just incredible. So like on the Wales Coastal Path, like people were just coming out randomly. I've never met them before and just putting their body on the line to help me go one step further. Like, running the Wales Coastal Path reconnected me with Wales, and I want to do the same now, but on a broader perspective, and do it with the whole of the UK. I want to meet different people. Also, there is this underlying thing of like, I am doing this for charity, and my reason why. So my reason why, and I probably should have mentioned it earlier, but it is a case of like, I have to have that reason why when I go into these challenges. And that reason why is never a fastest known time. It's never setting a world record. It's that charity. And in a way, it is quite selfish because it gives me another reason to not give up when it does get difficult. It allows you to think of other people which you are helping, and God help you. You do not want to let them down. So you just put one step in front of another and you just keep on going. And this time I'm actually doing it for Keris. So we're doing it in the fight against child abuse, because unfortunately when she was a child, she was abused by a family member, which is like horrendous. And do you know what? Her perspective on this whole thing is like, she will not let it define her. She will literally tackle it and she will talk to anybody about it. And she feels a better person for doing that. And she just wants other people to do the same and make it less of a taboo subject, because at the moment it's in the dark. And if we can bring it forward to the light and people talk about it, that's part of the fight there and then. You know, you're making it a common subject which other people will talk about. And hopefully, yeah, like so far since we announced the challenge, I've had 3 or 4 people get in touch, like friends that I've known for years, who've said that similar things have happened to them. But I never would have guessed that. And they've sort of just thanked me for like doing something like this to bring attention to such a taboo subject. So, you know what, that's what I'm looking forward to as well, most, to see whether we can actually make it less of a taboo subject, more people talk about it.
Definitely. It doesn't seem selfish to me, let's just say that. But out of all the challenges you've done, I suppose Death Valley, the Wales, like, and maybe another one. What was the toughest and maybe the most enjoyable as well?
Yeah, so I do have a. All right, so yeah, the toughest physically was Badwater. Is just the hottest, the hardest. You know, it's straight impact. You are trying to get there within under 48 hours. Wales Coast Path was difficult. It was just as hard, but for different reasons. The most difficult was actually when myself and a couple of friends, we were going to cycle back from Rome to. We were going to cycle from Rome to Paris. And we went to the start line. It was going to be a non-stop relay. So it would be like, I'd ride for 3 hours, then Ben, then me, and you just rotate that process. And we went to start. The first guy was in his kit. We were there all taking photos like tourists outside the Coliseum. And we go, right, go on, off you shoot. He shoots off on the bike. We go back to try and find the van. And we're like, where's the van? I don't understand. We parked it here. Surely we've just misplaced it, whatnot. Transpired the van had been stolen, and it had been stolen with like all of our spare kits, passports, mobile phones, wallets, money, spare bike, food supplies, everything. That support vehicle was our lifeline for the whole duration of that trip. And yeah, we had to ring the other guy. I had my phone on him, he had his phone on him, so I told him to come back, what had happened. But to cut a long story short, we actually ended up tracking down the van. We managed to get the van back. Everything had been gutted from the van, but they'd left our passports in a black bin bag in the front. So they're obviously conscious thieves. And we all shared cycling kit for 2 or 3 days. We all did the relay, but we had to share cycling kit between us because we only had one bike. And that challenge was difficult for obviously just having all of our stuff stolen and making it that way. And like, we were rock bottom. But as soon as we mentioned it to people, like, we'd only raised like 300-400 quid up until that point. We mentioned it, and the charity, they announced it on Facebook. Obviously we'd messed up and whatnot, and the donations came through, and it was like a clock. It was just ridiculous. You update it and it would be another couple of hundred, another couple of hundred. And by the end of the whole challenge, we'd raised about 10 grand for this charity. So something bad really happened, but something good also came from it, which, yeah, it's the one I didn't think it'd be the most difficult, but it was difficult for other reasons, not the physical side of things. And what you asked my favorite one as well, didn't you? My favorite one. Do you know what? Boston to Austin. So the initial 2010 run across America, it was difficult. It was a learning curve, but it was just an adventure. we were out there for 90 days. It was like 2,000 miles in total. It was me, my brother, my best friend, and then two of my other best friends who were crew. And we were living from motel to motel, eating microwave meals, barely any money between us. But we somehow managed to get it done. We blagged a sponsor from Puma. Puma had given us a load of kit. So like we were kitted up really well and everything like that. Don't know why they did that, but really kind of them. But yeah, just got to see so much of the land, meet a load of people, see a lot of wildlife, and just have fun with my friends. Yeah, I'd say Boston to Austin was really cool.
Let's talk about your diet now. We've talked about the running. What do you have to eat to do what you do?
My diet is the worst thing out of everything, my friend. What's my diet like? What do you mean, like during or leading up to?
In the build up to it. But like, talk to me about what you eat when you're running and how, to keep your body right. But then what do you eat when you don't have to eat quite as, extensively, I guess?
No. So during a challenge, like it could be a 20 miler, it could be 1,000 miler. I'm just terrible at eating on the run. Like it doesn't sit well with me. So a lot of my calories when I'm moving or out there by myself are liquid form. So like I'm lucky to be sponsored by a company called Hammer, and they do like it is like chocolate watery drinks, but it tastes like milkshake, which is quite nice. So I can guzzle that all day long, and it puts the nutrients in my body that I need to be able to get me from checkpoint to checkpoint. But when I get to a checkpoint, a lot of people think you have to like eat gels and all the goo stuff and all that, but it just doesn't work for me. And I eat real food, so like I eat a lot of fruits. I know there's not many calories in it, but it just refreshes your senses in a way. And if you've been drinking a lot of sports drinks and stuff, it just cleanses the palate a bit. But then I eat like bacon sandwiches. So on the Wales Coastal Path, every time I saw Cerys, I'd have a bacon sandwich there waiting for me, because we had a little camp with one of those VW vans, and they had a little stove in there. So she cooked me a bacon sandwich every time I saw her, which was absolutely fantastic. But when like you're in a place like Death Valley, you have to take all your stuff with you in there because there's no shops. So we take in a big ice cooler, and you go to like Walmart, which is like the equivalent of Asda over here, and you fill up like 2 trolleys worth of like food, drink, and you're never going to eat it all, but you have to have it just in case, because if I have a craving for something in the middle of nowhere, if we don't have it, then that's going to be a bit of an issue. Like mentally, I'll be like, a bit of a downer. But like that could be anything from like chocolate bars, lots of nuts, again, fresh fruit, crisps, beef jerky. I love when I'm over there. Stuff which needs to be able to keep in the heat. An ice cooler will last for a while, but after a while the ice goes and you have to top that back up. So like in Badwater, there's like 3 towns for 135 miles. So you can imagine a distance between each town. But in my general day-to-day life, I've learned to be more healthier now. But like I do love my food. I love eating it. And like I literally pasta tuna, everything like that. But I just portion it out now and sort of make sure that I'm eating the right quantities. I eat a lot of fresh fruit, salad. What else do I eat? Trying to think now. I say 6 days a week. I'm very, not strict, but I will make sure that I make conscious effort to eat healthy food. And then 1 day a week, I allow myself to like purge and just have whatever I want, basically. But it is a case of like, now my training's upping, I'm probably going to have to eat a bit more to be able to give myself the fuel to keep on going. So instead of 3 meals a day, it'd probably be 4 meals a day moving forward. And that could range from anything from like a salad to like tuna, pasta, bake, jacket potatoes, stuff like that. Pizza's got a lot of calories in it. It's dry. I love eating pizza. But I'm in it to like not be chiseled and like I'm not worried about what my body looks like, but I want my body to be in the best condition it can be in, and like it can still be in a good condition and I have a bit of a gut going on. It's fine.
that fills me with hope anyway. But I don't know how motivational you want to get with this answer, but when you do hit a wall, how do you pick? What is your method of picking yourself up? Because there's always going to be times, aren't there?
Yeah, you're right. And I touched upon it earlier when I mentioned about my reason why. So I know a number of other runners that have a reason why, and that reason why is your that is your punch through your wall. That is the place you go to when times get things get tough. You think about the reason you're out there. And for me, it's always going to be for charity, whatever I do. And with the Wales Coastal Path, it was for Cerys. This year will be for Cerys. So that reason why is it's a fuel, it's a fire, which when you do need it, I'm sure you guys about it before, you have an adrenaline rush. And you try to instigate that adrenaline rush when you get into your lowest. Like, that could be anything from thinking of your reason why, but you can connect it to music as well. So listen to certain tunes which can trigger off certain things within your body. Like, I love a bit of Take That, bit of Gary Barlow playing in your ears, fantastic to get you moving. But it is just a case of, yeah, that would be my reason, my way of dealing with a wall and punching through it, is to think of my reason why. And there's a really good video, if you get a chance to look at it. You ever heard of Buster Douglas?
Not me.
Right, so Buster Douglas is the one guy that knocked out Mike Tyson when he was like coming towards the end of his career. But there's a video, if you go on YouTube and type in Buster Douglas, there's a motivational video in there, and it's all about his reason why. And I won't spoil it. Watch it and let me know what you think of it, because when you do need it, you could watch that video and it gets the hairs in the back of your neck just going straight away.
You did just speak about your love for Take That and how you're their #1 biggest fan, and you love Gary Barlow and want to be Gary Barlow. But
yeah,
apart from Take That, who's in the running playlist? Who do you have in there? What does it look like?
So I think the word eclectic for my music choice is a bit dulled down, really. It goes from anything. I love a bit of rap, but I love rock music. So, God, I'm trying to name some people that you know now. I don't know. Think All American Rejects. I love them. Who have Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I'm going through a bit of a Green Day at the moment. I'm going through a Green Day phase at the moment.
Fall Out Boy. There you go. You remind me of Green Day. Fall Out Boy, fantastic. Not. Oh yeah. Sorry. All right. So where's that? Where's the camera? So these are my top songs from like 2020 that have been listened to most. The top one is The Greatest Showman. That amazing film. You'd never expect it, but that music's fantastic. But then straight underneath it, you got Shine Down, which is like completely like a lot of loud. Take That in at number 7. Shine Down. Oh yeah, Linkin Park as well. Like, how could I forget Linkin Park? And Eminem. Yeah, literally. See, it goes all over the place. But I just like certain things set me off, and you know what, it works. So
Ben, you have to watch Greatest Showman. We were talking about that earlier, and he's never seen it. And we were speaking about it because I actually saw it on your Instagram. You have a post saying like about The Greatest Showman being in your ears when you run.
Yeah, man.
Ben has never seen it.
Dude, come on.
I'm gonna have to now.
You're gonna have to. It's fantastic film. It's complete cheese. Like, just go into it with your mind open completely. But you will come out of there with one of those songs in your head, I promise you. And then it'll be top of your playlist on Spotify as well.
That's what we're watching tonight, Ben.
Deal.
Right, so the final question. Are there any moments through your challenges that stick to you, whether they're funny moments, grim moments? Is there anything that just sticks in your head? Have you got any funny stories?
Funny stories. God, I've got some really funny, disgusting stories. Right. How many do you want? And then I'll figure out which order I give them to you in.
As many as you want. Go for it.
God. Right. Okay. So in Death Valley before, not during the race, but in one of the crossings, a friend came over and ran with me. And he was crewing for me. So he's running a few miles, dipping in and out. And we had a break, and he was like, dude, your water tastes a bit funny. I was like, ah, Christ, like, is it the heat or whatnot? You know, the heat does play around with fluids over there. And then he's like, no, it tastes a bit salty. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he was like, what? And I was like, and I just started laughing, like literally, you know, when that uncontrollable laughter, and you know you should not be laughing, but you are literally giggling away. And transpired he'd been using my water, and he'd been filling up his water bottles with my water. He didn't ask, he'd just been doing it, which is fine. He was out there helping me. But about 2 hours previously, we were in one of the 3 towns on the whole route, and it was a car park, and there was people there, and I didn't want to get out. I was having a break, and I went for a wee in a bottle, and I didn't disperse of it. I just put it back in the thing. And he'd been drinking my urine for the best part of like 2 hours, not realizing. He thought it was like a salt tablet in the drink. That's how dehydrated the fluid was. And I was just like, he was like, if you weren't so right now, I'd punch you square in the face because this is horrendous. These are brand new water bottles, and now I've just been drinking your for the last 2 hours. That's probably one of the lowest points. Not low, funniest points. We're still friends now, so I'm allowed to tell the story. What other stories do I have? Death Valley again. Basically, don't crew for me is the end thing of this whole story. We stopped to the side of the road. There wasn't much around for toilets, and I ended up going outside for toilet break. I went back to the van to get something to get rid of said thing I dropped on the floor. And when I came back to the van, one of the crew had gone around the back, and they didn't realise, but they'd stepped in my poo. But the worst thing was, they didn't have shoes on, they had flip-flops on, and they'd scooped it on the top of their toes. So like the front of their toes were literally just covered in it. And they got back in the support crew, and we were like, what's that smell? And like we were all blaming one another. And then the guy just looked at his foot, and he was like, he just literally was almost sick everywhere. He was like, this is disgusting. I'm going home. I am not getting back in that van with you. You are a feral child. It was one of those things. I was gobsmacked. That was like 2 years previously, the urine incident. So you just need to be on your guard when you're crewing for me, basically. I promise you, I am not a bad person. It was just a bad situation, and things played out the wrong way.
That is amazing.
They're probably two of the funniest stories, and my wife is listening in the kitchen, probably like, why are you saying that story? But there we go.
That is amazing. Well, those are all the questions for. Also, if I've learned anything from Bear Grylls, I've learned that it's good to drink your own urine. So, if anything, he's got to thank you for something. But those are all the questions we've got for you. Thank you very much for joining us today and giving us your time. If anyone wants to have a look at your social medias, they'll be on the screen. And if they want to follow your journey, then I'm sure you'll be keeping everyone update on Instagram and Twitter. But thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been brilliant. And if you want to come run some miles with me on this UK thing, come out and do it.
I mean, we might have to. We might not do the whole thing, but maybe we'll join you for a few miles. 5K.
We'll get your 5K down from 25 minutes.
That'll make us look so bad. That'll make us look so bad. We'd be panting, and we'll be hands on the knees at the end, and then you'll be going to do like another 100 miles.
They should come out and see it anyway.
Definitely.
Yeah, we will. We actually will. Thank you very much for joining us.